Hello everybody and welcome to my first proper attempt at a Hearts of Iron 4 video. This video is the top 15 naval countries in the game. This means countries which are strong for naval gameplay, and if you enjoy naval combat and design in Hearts of Iron 4, then these are probably the countries for you. Please keep in mind I'm playing with the Road to 56 RP mod and the Increased Resources mod, links in the description. I highly recommend both mods, and I'm confident that once you try them you're not going to go back to vanilla Hearts of Iron. The resource mod only affects smaller countries, such as in South America, the Middle East, and Ireland, which basically is shit and unplayable otherwise, even with a Road to 56 focus tree, as you're going to have to trade away every civ you have, just for basic resources. Without these mods, this would be a top 5 video, because there's probably not really even more than 5 countries in the entire game capable of making navies in the vanilla game. What remaining countries have not been mentioned may still be able to create a navy, but they're probably not really worth focusing on it. But again, if you have a really niche country you just love, that's good for you, great, don't hate me. This is just my opinion. Some of the positionings on this list I've actually struggled a little bit to decide where certain things are going to go, especially in the top 5 especially, it was quite difficult to decide on. But I made the decisions that I've made, and let's jump right in. So before we get started quickly, just some clarifications. There are 3 things I want to talk about quickly first. Firstly, there is a tier system. Countries that are referred to as tier 4 being the lowest tier are countries that are somewhat difficult to set up for a mediocre level of power in terms of their navy, or they are unreasonably difficult to set up for a relatively decent navy. Tier 3 are countries that are easy to set up but produce an okay navy, or are more situational to make a situationally strong navy. Tier 2 are countries that are easy to set up and create a strong navy, or are hard to set up for an incredibly strong navy. And Tier 1 countries are countries that require little work or setup and produce an incredibly strong navy, naturally. I'm going to talk about resource availability of countries, the industrial potential of countries, the strategic positioning of countries, the strength of their naval assets and buffs, among other things. So let's just jump right in and see where we're at. Bringing up the rear, in 15th place, is Greece. Greece is not a bad country, and though it's lower down on the list, advanced Greece players are going to be able to pull off a lot more. But we'll get to that in due course. The starting population of Greece is 6.2 million, so not particularly high, but you know, it could be lower, The starting navy of Greece isn't actually too bad for a minor country. The Greek navy starts with 2 battleships, 1 heavy cruiser, 1 light cruiser, 12 destroyers, and 6 submarines. So that's not bad for conducting basic missions. Greece is a tier 4 country because I believe generally it's quite hard to do well as Greece. Realistically, it involves quite a lot of conquest, and without allies, especially as a new player, you're going to struggle. In terms of Greek starting resources, you start with 0 oil, 48 aluminium, 0 rubber, 16 tungsten, 63 steel, and 65 chromium. As you can see here, this is a good example of the Increased Resources mod, is it doesn't say that here, but the second I press go, it updates, you have a little bit more steel. So Greece is one of those beneficiary countries that really get a nice little boost from the Increased Resources mod. The starting industry in Greece isn't particularly strong, but it's not bad. You have 15 starting factories, of which 3 are naval factories. The strategic positioning of Greece is quite important, as there's actually, the positioning itself is really good. You're on the Greek peninsula, you have a couple of islands, which can be difficult to defend, but if you're a noob and you stay exactly where you are, defending the mountainous region in the north of Greece is not a problem at all. It's a little bit more difficult to defend your eastern boundaries. But conquest, when you become slightly more advanced, is actually in a very favourable position for a Greek player. So I'm going to quickly jump onto another save where I have basically shown you a general sort of expansion you would expect to go for as Greece if you were going to be a competent Greece player. Welcome to future Greece. So as you can see, there's actually some pretty nice border potential for Greece. Effectively, you conquer Bulgaria and Yugoslavia, you've got this beautiful long river, and you can even take this area from Romania if you wish. And you've got this lovely long river line which you could defend, making it near impossible for a land invasion, really. And obviously the Italian border's there, but hey, if you're joining the Axis, then it's not really a problem. Your biggest problem is going to be naval invasions from the Allies, which can be a little bit more difficult to defend against. But in terms of strategic positioning, Greece is a really well strategically positioned country. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. You've also got a lot of resources. Now that you've sort of done this, you can see there's a lot more resources at stake. You've now got 115 steel, 259 chromium, and 226 aluminium. You haven't got much oil, rubber, or tungsten, but as a naval focus, these are the two main important ones, steel and chromium. Aluminium means you have a good air force as well. So Greece, all round, it's not a bad country at all if you've managed to gain a little bit of territory. In terms of your naval bases, I would mainly focus them, believe it or not, originally I was thinking I would put them around here in sort of the Greek rivers, or even in the Aegean. But when I think about it, I've thought about this again, I think I'd be more likely to put them now in the Adriatic, because if you put your naval bases along the Adriatic coast, you only need to defend this little bit of water, which Italy will do with you if you join the Axis. As long as you're allied with the Axis, I think that's definitely where you want your naval bases to be, and you've got plenty of slots to build your naval bases. And obviously, where there's only one waterway connecting to them, it's very easily defendable. If you wanted to put some of your more elite or, fully infrastructured naval bases in the rivers in the Greek territory, then obviously your your anti-air defenses are going to be protecting those bases. So maybe your most, 10 out of 10 naval dockyards you want to be in here. Another negative of having lots of dockyards is obviously that you can be navally invaded from them and enemies will get more supply. So it's worth noting you may wish to put most of your main dockyards up here after all, just so you can stop the naval invasions coming from in that direction. You don't have any overseas territories as Greece, which can be a little bit of a problem, as it means your ships are limited to the territory of your allies and yourself. You don't really have any overseas colonies to refuel, but it's not the end of the world. Greece does have a number of buffs to their starting navy, so they don't have a huge number, which is why they're only number 15 on the list. You can have a ship designer with minus 15% construction costs for all cruisers. I'm not sure if this counts as heavy and light, but I assume it would, and 15% is a pretty big decrease. You can also get plus 5% screen attack and plus 10% screen defense for all screening ships. That is a military high commander. If you're not aware, there's three main types of buff coming from politics. Ship designers, chief of the navy, and down here you have three military high commanders. And lastly, they have the decisive battle chief of the navy, which gives them plus 10% capital ship armor and also 10% screen attack and defense, which brings Greece into 15th place on this list. In 14th place, we have got Colombia. So Colombia, it's a South American country, which is not particularly expected. But hey, you start off with a cool 8 million people, but this can easily rise to about 40 million after you've done your South American conquests. The main problem with Colombia is the lack of shipbuilding resources, steel and chromium, and a significant lack of industry. You start off with only 20 oil, 0 aluminium, 0 rubber, 0 tungsten, 8 steel, and 0 chromium. I would imagine, yes, this is another country who greatly benefits from the resource mod, which you'll see here. Pop. Wow, you get a little bit more steel. But that's still nice. Every little helps. Now, in terms of your starting industry, you have 10 factories, so a lot less than Greece, and only one of them is a naval factory. Generally, your strategic starting position is probably a 6 out of 10, just because of the lack of resources, really. But on the bright side, you're not really going to be attacked by anyone either. So it's quite a safe position to do what you want without being bothered. I'm going to quickly move on to how you will see a standard sort of Colombia expansion. So as Colombia, you can go on to form Grand Colombia. Generally, this only really takes about the top half of the South American peninsula. However, I believe it's quite easy to conquer South America as a whole. So I've used the scenario of this is the maximum potential that you're going to get if you do conquer most of South America, not including Brazil and Uruguay or major colonial powers. So as you can see from this conquest, your population has increased to 40 million. In terms of your resources now, your resources have also significantly increased. You have now got 342 oil, 300 aluminium, 56 rubber, 158 tungsten, 184 steel, but no chromium. Altogether, these are pretty good. You've got all the oil you're ever going to need for a navy. You've got an alright amount of steel for a small navy. You could be a regional power, but the main problem is going to be your chromium. You also have 122 factories, of which 28 are naval. Now, you would have thought with such a long coastline you would have more naval factories, but part of the problem is that it's very underdeveloped territory, which means you cannot build large amounts of factories. Remember that research can improve the number of factories in a state, which will allow you to exponentially increase your naval dockyards later into the game. All of my testing in this game is entirely done using states alone with no science or research boosts for the amount of factories in a state. And the same for focus trees. In terms of naval base location, you've got some amazing choices, however. You can build it in the Gulf of Paraguay down here. There's some brilliant naval locations here. Not bad at all. You could build them off the coast of Chile. Nice little locations again. Or my personal favourite, probably for Gran Colombia, would be this little in-groove here by Maracaibo. I don't pronounce things properly. But hey, you've got enough room for 4 naval bases here, which is quite nice. For a small country, I very much doubt you'd need more than 4 to begin with. Unfortunately, as Colombia, one big downside is you may have a slightly better position than Greece, but Greece's starting navy is vastly superior. You only have 2 destroyers, and that is it. In terms of the strength of naval assets to Colombia, one huge asset that Colombia has is either 5% reduction on heavy cruisers or submarines, so you could build just an entirely submarine-based navy, and that could be pretty good. Another sad thing is you don't have a single good naval ship designer. However, on the bright side, you do get the decisive battle chief of navy, giving plus 10% armor and attack to capital ships. Also, screen attack and screen defense is increased by 10% also. And that brings Colombia in at 14th place on this list. The next country on this list is one that I haven't played personally ever whatsoever. And also, I'm not an experienced player with it, and I didn't even want to go through certain things on my own anyway. So realistically, a good player of said country is going to rate it higher than where I have placed it on this list, which is 13th. That is Spain. Spain is a tier 3 country with a core population of 25 million, but this can easily be increased to 40 million by conquering Portugal, or even more by conquering aspects of France. The resources you can expect to have from the basics of Spain are 0 oil, 2 aluminium, 0 rubber, 53 tungsten. You can expect to get, there we go, 192 steel. So you have a little bit more aluminium there as well, actually. Spain's been buffed a little bit by this mod, that's good. But the main downside is you don't have chromium, you don't have oil, which is detrimental to naval strategy. You're going to start the game with 28 factories, out of which 4 are naval factories. By the late game, you can expect to have at least 72 factories, with 30 of which being naval. So it's a regional power, similar to Romania, but it's quite a powerful regional power. In terms of strategic positioning, I've given it an 8 out of 10, because really the mountain areas to the north of Spain are very easily defendable, and realistically your only real worry is naval invasions, and you've got enough aluminium to build torpedo bombers to defend your coasts. I did not want to fight through the Civil War myself, but I'm sure the Spanish focus trees provide an awful lot in terms of boosting their industry later on. And a Spain main, I'm sure, will tell you that Spain is a lot more capable than I am giving them credit for. In terms of the Spanish Navy, the Spanish Navy is actually quite formidable at the beginning. It's not bad, it's about the same as Greece. You have 2 battleships, 5 light cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 12 submarines. In terms of the strength of naval assets you can get as Spain, you can get minus 10% to all heavy ship production. This is very, very, very useful, and I'm sure they get other bonuses aside from this. You can also get the Decisive Battle Chief, as previously mentioned, buffing capital ships, and also screen ships. However, with the screen ship boosting with this, you get plus 10% screen attack and plus 15% screen defense, making it better than the ones we have previously mentioned. The next country on my list, in 12th place, is the Netherlands. The Netherlands Navy is not particularly strong at the beginning of the game. You start with 3 heavy cruisers, 3 light cruisers, 8 destroyers, and 20 submarines. It's not bad, but it could certainly be better. It starts as a tier 3 country with a population of about 8 million. In terms of your starting resources, you start with 2 oil, 62 aluminium, 1 rubber, 0 tungsten, 14 steel, 0 chromium, which is detrimentally low, to be honest. The strategic positioning of the country is quite good because it allows you to swallow up your smaller neighbours, and you obviously have control of the Dutch East Indies, which is very nice. I'm going to show you what a typical sort of Netherlands player is going to look like later in the game. Quite early in the game, I would expect you to go to war with Belgium and conquer the Belgian region. One downside of the Netherlands is I believe it's slightly easier to conquer the Netherlands with Belgium than it is to conquer Belgium with the Netherlands, but when you become a skilled player, you should have a better idea of that. So, one big thing to note, I've obviously formed here, as you can see, the Republic of Belanu. you get a absolutely colossal manpower boost, up to almost 95 million core population, which is absolutely insane. Most of that is coming directly from the East Indies, which you have now captured. Now, in terms of your industry, you can expect to have 106 base factories, including 50 naval factories, which is pretty good. Most of your navy is going to be stationed in the northern regions of Europe, and obviously it's going to be quite difficult to defend this from either Germany or the Allies. With Germany, you need to build fortifications all along the border, or with the Allies, you need to obviously defend with adequate air defense, especially when it comes to the British Air Force. In terms of resources, your resource pool is looking pretty good. You've got 87 oil, enough to fund any small navy, 128 aluminium. Mainly you're going to be focused on anti-air defenses rather than fighters, I would imagine. Rubber, which is a massive export, which should bring you in some more factories. And you've got 20 tungsten, 153 steel, and no chromium. Chromium means you're not going to be able to get large battleships, so you may be focusing more on aircraft carriers or potentially even heavy cruisers. In terms of your naval base locations, I would mainly recommend keeping your naval bases in Europe if you think you can hold them. If not, you're best basically jumping ship and moving straight to the the Dutch East Indies, and trying to rebuild bases over there. But obviously it's going to be very difficult to defend against Japan there, because you have so many small islands which need separate garrisons. In terms of buffs to your navy, the Netherlands is actually a pretty good country for that. For a start, you get the National Spirit Naval Heritage. This gives you a permanent 10% boost to all naval dockyard output, anywhere in the world. You also have a lot of ship designers, including one that specializes in screen ships, giving them higher range, better sub-detection, and higher max speed. They also increase the production cost, though. There's a raiding fleet, which basically decreases carrier size for their flight decks and capital ship heavy attacks, but gives them lower visibility, meaning they are harder to track down by enemies while you're raiding your convoys. And finally, you have a Pacific Fleet designer, giving you bigger aircraft carrier deck sizes, less armor, and more range for all vessels. You can also get raiding efficiency, which that's on top of the previous boost, which gives you a further 20% efficiency to raiding efficiency. And finally, you can get the naval bombing, targeting, and agility increased all by 3%. That's buffing the fighters of your aircraft carriers. That brings the Netherlands in 12th place on the list. In 11th place on the list, we're moving on to Turkey, another tier 3 country, with a starting population of, I believe, 16 to 18 million. Turkey is one of the few countries that I've mained, so I can say from experience, one downside of Turkey is they feel very slow when you're starting off. You never really get a navy until the mid-1940s, properly. Turkey is also a country that benefits from the increased resource mod slightly. As you can see, you get about 20 extra steel and 20-ish extra aluminium. Chromium is not a problem, but steel will be a problem for you, but it's a problem that will be remedied through the game. So in terms of your starting navy, you start with 1 battle cruiser, 2 light cruisers, 6 destroyers, and 5 submarines. In terms of your starting industry and resources, you have 15 factories, including 1 naval factory. In terms of strategic positioning, the biggest asset you have is your location towards the Black Sea and control of its strait. This is the ultimate naval base location. The downside of Turkey is you are very vulnerable to naval invasions from the Allies. And this is a disadvantage that only exacerbates further you go into the war, as when you expand into more territory and reform the Ottoman Empire, they can still just navally invade you basically wherever they like. Once you've done a bit of conquering with Turkey, it's going to look somewhat like this. It's not particularly hard to reform the Ottoman Empire. It looks very vast, it looks very large. One thing about the Ottoman Empire you'll notice, though, is it doesn't actually have all that much in it, and there's an awful lot of territory which requires defending. So in terms of industry, your industry is actually very, very, very good as the Ottoman Empire. You can increase your industry to about 163 factories, of which about 50 are naval, which is really, really not bad at all. And in terms of your resources, you now have 184 oil, more than you're ever going to need, 144 aluminium, enough for local defense, and 326 steel and 600 chromium for your navy, which is more than enough to build a very mighty navy. The downsides with the Ottomans that bring them down are the fact that you are very, very, very vulnerable to naval invasions. I've only played communist Ottomans, as I believe Russia is quite a big threat if you decide to side with the Soviets. You also have control of the Suez Canal. However, Britain still has control of Gibraltar, meaning you're not really able to limit them coming into this area of water. Finally, in terms of naval base locations, you've got the Black Sea here, where you can drop your naval bases over here. And also, you have got the Persian Gulf down here. Iran is not part of the Ottoman Empire officially, but it's very easy to conquer when playing as Turkey. So realistically, this is what I would expect you to conquer playing as Turkey or the Ottoman Empire. Overall, that brings Turkey in 11th place on this list. And it is a country that I've named myself, as I said before. It's a very nice country. And though it doesn't focus on navy, it's got a lot of focus on land, you're perfectly capable of building a respectable navy. Next on the list, in 10th place, is Sweden. This is going to be interesting because the next entry on the list covers some of the same things, so I'm not going to go over it all twice. Sweden starts the game with basically no resources, a small amount of aluminium. You have zero oil, 3 aluminium, which, by the way, increased by the mod, is 28. 0 rubber, 4 tungsten, 187 steel, and 0 chromium. So, Sweden, you've got lots of steel. Brilliant for a navy. Excellent. You start off the game with 16 factories, including 3 naval dockyards, and more importantly, you start with a mighty powerful navy for a minor country. As you can see, we have 9 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, 7 destroyers, and 10 submarines. Now, as Sweden is the most powerful of the Nordic countries, but not the one with the highest potential. You can easily invade Denmark and Norway at the same time before moving on to Finland, all before the Soviets even start knocking at the door. You can then reinforce and defend yourself from the Soviet aggression. In terms of the strength of your naval assets, Sweden gets a focus called Recycling Focus, which gives 5% to all naval dockyard output. Not bad indeed. Also, you can get a further minus 10% production cost to all trade ships and light hulls, including cruisers and destroyers. They get the Atlantic Fleet Ship Designer, which gives you plus 50% armor and 10% HP to all aircraft carriers, and all capital ships get plus 10% armor and attack. You can also get Escort Fleet, which boosts screen ship range and sub-detection, and you can also get Military High Command, which boosts Naval Strike, which is for plus 3% naval bombing targeting agility, Fleet Logistics for increased range, and also plus 5% screen attack and plus 10% screen defense. I recommend naval bases basically anywhere in the Baltic Sea. You can put it in the Ocean of Finland or in the upper Baltic Sea between Sweden and Finland, which is generally where I tended to put it myself. I actually love Sweden. It's the second country I ever made, and it's a very formidable country when you actually manage to get it up there. I actually defeated my friend playing as the American Navy playing Sweden. The difference was I was relatively good at playing Sweden, and he was relatively not at playing in America. But they can certainly punch above their weight as far as naval combat goes, and they are only 10th on the list. Next on the list is Norway. This was shocking for me. As a half Norwegian, I was happy to read this, but it was genuinely shocking. You'll see why I've put Norway above Sweden in the end. This is partially because of the mod. So, Norway starts with almost no resources whatsoever, basically. I don't think it's even affected by the mod, honestly. No, it's not really. So, no oil, a little bit of aluminium, a little bit of steel, but that's basically it. In terms of their navy at the beginning of the game, again, it's not actually the worst thing in the world. You could certainly be in a worse position. So we have 4 heavy cruisers, 5 destroyers, and 9 submarines, so it could certainly be improved upon. So, benefits of the Norwegian Navy. In terms of your industry, you have only 10 factories, opposed to, I think, the 16 that were in Sweden. 2 of these are naval dockyards. Your starting population is abysmal, 2.9 million. Basically nothing. Though it will be equal to Sweden in the end. Obviously, you get the same territory. It's mainly the focuses that put Norway above Sweden, in my opinion. The main difference is it's a lot easier as Sweden to conquer Denmark and Norway than it is for Norway to conquer Denmark and Sweden. But it is possible for an experienced player. Norway is a much better focus tree in terms of maximum potential. You can get the focus war goals, which claims far more territory and having better potential generally than Sweden at the end game, but not at the beginning. Obviously, it's harder at the beginning of the game. You're probably going to be making the Nordic Council. Norway has a very strong focus tree. Even aside from Navy, they have things that give them multiple percentiles for recruitable population, and even a plus 15% flat monthly population. And when you boost that 15% extra population growth, and you mix that with, if you look down here, for example, the social order, which is melting pot, that gives you 125% monthly population growth. And you also have population control growth over here, which gives you another 35% population, you can very quickly boost your population. So overall, even though you're going to be stuck with a small population, even with all this territory, you should be increasing the population significantly, which means you shouldn't have too many problems in terms of your population later on. I'm going to move on to what you would see as the conquests of Norway and Sweden. Now, I was very happy with this. I decided, I would like to actually play a monarchist game of Norway one day. I think it'd be very fun. The focus tree generally, Navy aside for Norway, is extremely fun. Honestly, it's very, very, very fun. I really, really enjoyed it. In terms of just reading at it, it looks very fun. So you get the Kingdom of Norway, you get a beautiful king, wonderful. Hakon is a very traditional Norwegian name, apparently, for kings. But yeah, so, moving forward. When you've completed the territory gains of the whole of Scandinavia, you can also, the one unique thing about Norway is you can gain a couple of islands off of Britain as well, which are very useful, and they'll usually give them to you. In terms of your total resources, you're going to have 12 oil, 179 aluminium, 0 rubber, 24 tungsten, 319 steel. Sweden, by the way, in the same position, only gets 290, so it's a 30 steel boost. And that's not even including resource gain efficiency, which can make that even a bigger boost. And the same with chromium, you make like an extra, I believe, 10-ish chromium, which is a little boost, but it's nice. Naval bases I'd put in the same location, in the Gulf of Sweden here and Finland. You could put some in the north of Norway as well if you wanted. You've got overseas territories too, so you can refuel your ships in Greenland and also Iceland. Now let's get on to the real strength of Norway, the strength of their naval buffs. They have a permanent plus 5% naval dockyard output from new defense budget. Also, you can get a plus 15% naval dockyard output from the expanded shipbuilding industry focus. 15% is a massive bonus. That means for every 100 factories you have working on ships, you've actually got 115, where Sweden would only have 100. In terms of ship designers, they have good options as well. They have the Mariens Hoverdruff, weird Norwegian pronunciation, and that gives all capital ships plus 10% armor, speed, and heavy attack, but minus 10% range. It also buffs heavy cruisers. The escort focus gives your screens much higher range, better sub-detection, and max speed. You can also get military high commanders, and they have a very good one called aerial navigation. Aerial navigation. That's a first that one's come out. I mean, naval aviation experts. And unlike the minor 3% boost you got from playing the Netherlands, with Norway you get plus 10%, 12%, and plus 15% air attack, targeting, and agility, respectively. If you go monarchist, you can also get another flat 4% capital ship armor and naval AA attack. That gives you plus 14% armor and a little bit of extra naval attack as well. And finally, you can buy ships from Britain and Germany to augment your navy. And that makes Norway significantly more powerful than Sweden if you have managed to create a Nordic empire, bringing Norway in at 9th place. The further entries on this list are going to be hitting much higher than Norway and Sweden. This is where things really sort of grow exponentially. 8th place on this list, we have the German Reich. Now, there are some people that are diehard German fans, and they're going to say that Germany has much more potential, and there are others that are going to say Germany is just trash for their navy. So we're going to look at both situations today. I'm going to say Germany are a tier 3, but they could really be a tier 2 as well. In terms of the starting navy, Germany has a pretty strong starting navy, actually, which might surprise you, considering you never see Germany really conducting naval action. As you can see here, the German navy starts with 2 battleships, 2 heavy cruisers, 8 light cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 14 submarines. It's not bad, but it's really not much more impressive than Sweden or any other country like that. In terms of their starting industry and resources, they have a very good position. So in terms of your starting resources, you have 3 oil, 137 aluminium, 0 rubber, 5 tungsten, 424 steel, which is the main one, and 5 chromium. We can see they are lacking oil and chromium, important ship resources. But the steel is going to be extremely valuable. In terms of their starting industry, they have 69 factories, of which 10 of them are naval, which is significantly more than any of the lower down options on this list. That means you can start building ships right at the beginning of the game. Battleships, aircraft carriers, whatever you like, effectively. And their starting population is 65 million, which is significantly more than France, Britain, Italy, or any other European power. I'm going to jump onto a developed, or a more developed Germany, just to give you an example of how Germany can progress. So, Germany has much more expansion potential than this. This is just the example I used if you wanted to get the coastline back. You know, the Baltic? Yes, Baltic countries are very easy to conquer. Poland's no, difficult thing to conquer. You could really conquer the whole of Poland if you wanted to. You'll be fighting with the Soviets, obviously, for this territory, but I mean, it's perfectly possible. So this is just a hypothetical example of what Germany is capable of. So the first thing you'll notice is that Germany has a massive increase in resources after expanding. They can get up 4 oil, a little bit more of an aluminium boost, they get up to 500 steel. One of the sad things about Germany in terms of its location is Poland and a lot of these countries don't really have any resources for them to take. So the main asset you have is your steel, which is largely more useful for land armies. I could have taken Luxembourg, I suppose, for a little bit of extra steel, but I just never did. In terms of your factories, you now have up to 280 or 275 factories, of which 100 are naval. That is 100 naval factories building ships. In terms of naval bases, you have the Kiel Canal, which allows you to get your ships in and out of the Baltic Sea without worrying about the oceans up here. Realistically, you're going to easily conquer Denmark, I think. You probably wouldn't need to go into Sweden or Norway. That was a big mistake the Germans made in real life. I would take Denmark and just stay there, really. Or even, you don't even need to. Because of the Kiel Canal, you don't need to invade Denmark. And there's not really a whole lot to gain. There's not resources or not really anything there, apart from a little bit more of industry, only a little bit. I didn't even take Austria in this example, as you can see, so obviously there's plenty more expansion for you to do as Germany. The thing with Germany is it doesn't have the same level of boosts that the countries higher up on this list get. In terms of production, you can get minus 10% production cost for all heavy ships. You have the Atlantic Fleet Designer, which buffs your armor and HP on aircraft carriers and capital ship, armor, and attack. You can get Raiding Fleet Designers, which obviously decrease surface visibility, increase max speed, etc., etc. And the Battle Fleet Designer, which is a more unique one for Germany, provides plus 10% naval research speed, and all capital ships get plus 15% armor and heavy attack. That's 15%, not 10%, so that's significantly better. Also, all screens get plus 25% torpedo attack and minus 25% sub detection. You can also get a Chief of the Navy, which increases raiding efficiency, or the Decisive Battle Expert, boosting capital ships, armor, and attack by 10% each. This will give you plus 25% attack and armor for all battleships. This gives Germany the potential to have more superior battleships than most other countries, better than Britain, better than France, because you have a 25% boost, not just the 10 or 15, 25, and that is significant. You can also get a Military High Commander, giving all of your ships plus 15% naval anti-air attack, and that's critical for countering opposing aircraft carriers. I prefer to have cruisers, which have lots of anti-air, just dedicated anti-air cruisers, and that works very well. So yes, that is Germany, and that brings Germany in at 8th place on this list. In 7th place on the list, we have France. France, bound to be on the list somewhere. France has a very large starting navy. These are only the ships that are going to be directly in France. You actually have some more ships out in the Philippines, which I'm not even going to mention here. Not so many capital ships, I don't believe. But in terms of capital ships, France has an incredible starting navy. You start with 1 aircraft carrier, 5 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, 3 light cruisers, 50 destroyers, and 60 submarines. A huge number. In terms of starting resources, you have the most steel in the game, I believe. In terms of starting resources, you come out with 2 oil, 342 aluminium, 11 rubber, 0 tungsten, 798 steel, and 118 chromium. Massive amounts. That's a little bit less chromium than you'd like, but more than enough for what you're going to need. In terms of starting factories, you start with 50, including 9 naval dockyards, so almost as good as Germany in terms of your industry. You do have some negative debuffs at the beginning of the game, but they can be easily lost later in the game. Your starting population is significantly smaller than Germany with only 56 million, but this can be quite easily increased after your conquest. A conquest I will now demonstrate an example of. France has the potential for some very easy conquering. If Germany isn't hostile towards you, you have a lot of easy conquering. The 2 areas here you're not really going to get from Germany unless you conquer them or if you negotiate to take them from them, but you have an amazing natural border here with the Rhine River if you did manage to take it. You can easily conquer Belgium and the Netherlands. I'm a big fan of the Napoleon skill tree, so, I mean, that's kind of natural for me. Also, after the Spanish Civil War, Spain is easily, single-handedly conquered by France. It is not even a threat. It's a case of Spain having a revolving door between Spain and France, and you just walk through that door and say, Vive la France. So you can get massive amounts of territory, which will exponentially increase your resources. When you have fully industrialized France and Spain, your resources will skyrocket. 1,450 steel. That is effectively infinite steel for your users. And also 600 aluminium. So you have near infinite resources in that regard. And a population of 90 million, which is a absolutely massive number. You still have a shortage of chromium and a little bit of a shortage of oil, but with the 266 factories, including 90 naval dockyards, you should not have any problem getting those resources back. The benefit for France is its geographical position and its strong starting position. On the downside, its focus tree is exceptionally weak for a naval power. You get nothing at all from its focus tree in terms of bonuses, unfortunately. However, you have a massive wealth of ship designers. Battle fleet designers will give all capital ships plus 15% armor and heavy attack, while buffing screen ships by 25% torpedo attack damage and minus 25% sub detection. You also get a research speed buff. You can get mass producers, which I don't know if they're unique to France, but all ships can cost 16% less, but they get less range. And you can get, things like that. You can also get the Atlantic fleet designer, buffing the armor and health of your carriers, and the attack and armor of your battleships. And you can also get the escort, raiding fleet, and Pacific fleet designers. The Pacific fleet being most noteworthy, as it gives plus 25% max range and deck size to carriers, but weaker armor. This is an American tactic, by the way. In the Pacific, the Japanese and the Americans have very low armor on their aircraft carriers, while the British, in comparison, a bomb that would, sink an American carrier or a Japanese carrier would not sink a British carrier. In fact, it would only put it out of service for a few hours, and there are documented cases of this happening, as British carriers in World War II were a lot more heavily armored, and that is the difference between the Atlantic and Pacific designers in Hearts of Iron, at least. You can also get the Chief of the Navy that gives capital ships 10% extra attack and armor, so that gives you the total buff of 25% armor and attack for your battleships, which is going to be extremely useful. They also get the Naval Aviation Expert, but it's only plus 3, 3, and 4%, so nowhere near as good as Norway's. But there are others that are just as good as that, and they can also get raiding efficiency, plus 15% convoy raiding. France takes the spot over Germany simply because they have a larger starting navy. They have a much, much larger starting navy, and even if you can't build, or you can build equal amount of ships, you start off with more, including a carrier. So, you've also got more ship designers, unlike Germany, which give you more flexibility in the design of your fleet. And that brings France in 7th place on the list. In 6th place, we have got Italy. Now, again, Italy's one of those countries people can say are terrible or really, really good. And there's some people that might go, oh, Italy is the best in the game. And yeah, technically, it actually has the potential to probably be the best in the game. But realistically, you're not going to pull that off. Italy's the first country on the... This is where we jump from Tier 3 to Tier 2. Remember, the classification for Tier 2 is a country is easy to set up and has a strong navy, like Italy. Or it's potentially harder to set up, but has a insanely strong navy. And Italy has that. So Italy starts the game with a population of 40 million-ish. But that can be increased safely. You can see Italy had basically no changes from the resource mod. You start with not that many resources, honestly. 1 oil, 99 aluminium, 0 rubber, 0 tungsten, and 100 steel, and basically no chromium either. They do start with a respectable starting navy, however. There's a couple of, dotted destroyers around again that aren't particularly here, so it's going to focus on what's in the Mediterranean. They start with 2 battleships, 8 heavy cruisers, 11 light cruisers, 71 destroyers, and 47 submarines. A very respectable starting navy indeed. In terms of their industry, they start with 51 factories, a pretty good number, and out of those, 11 are naval. That gives them the most naval factories in Europe at the beginning of the game. They also have a bunch of ships already being built. Some of the other countries do too, but Italy has quite a few. And noteworthy is they're mostly complete, which is nice. The thing with Italy is it takes a very highly skilled player to make the most of an Italian conquest. And we're going to take that to the extreme today. Italy is only in 6th place because the odds of you actually managing to pull this off are negligible to non-existent. But should you manage, Italy becomes a superpower. Welcome to the Holy Roman Empire of Italy. Mussolini here looking absolutely beautiful with his Caesaresque crown or whatever you want to call it. I don't actually know because I'm uneducated. But obviously Italy has the Roman ambitions focus, which can give you an absolutely ridiculous amount of land. I'm not going to propose on how you would go about doing this. All I know is that it is possible for those of you who are so sweaty and so inclined to pull it off. In this scenario, Italy becomes pretty much the most powerful country in the universe. You get a population of 225 million, and you get an absolutely eye-watering amount of 1,000 aluminum, 1,800 steel, 500 tungsten, and 800 chromium, infinite resources, and 600 factories, including 230 naval factories. But by this point, if you've ever actually pulled this off, the game is probably already over, and the only people you've got left to fight are probably Japan, the Soviets, Britain, and America. That's all I could possibly think of. So yes, obviously Italy has the ultimate potential to be the most powerful country in the universe, but it's not that easy to pull off. And given what I would expect you to capture, which is just Italy and Africa, the areas of Africa, that puts Italy in about 6th place. Okay, so in terms of Italy's strength of naval assets, you have a decision to get minus 5% factory output and plus 5% dockyard output, or minus 10 and plus 10 respectively. They also have an ethic called Shift Towards the Offensive Force. This is your plus 5% naval hit chance, and plus 10% the number of ships in the first naval contact. So if you have 10 battleships, well, you get the idea. You get a slightly stronger starting force in a battleship force. You also get plus 5% capital ship attack from that. That's a national spirit. You can also get a Chief of the Navy, which gives plus 3% to air attacks, and also agility to planes and carriers, and decisive battle, giving plus 10% armor and attack, and also buffing your screen ships. You can also get anti-submarine specialist for better submarine detection. You can get an extra 8% naval AA attack from the naval air defense expert, and plus 10% capital ship armor and attack. That gives you a total of a 20% boost in attack and armor to your battleships. Not as good as the German 25%. But it does give you also an 8% naval AA attack, which is again slightly inferior to the Germans. But Italy, you're really playing Italy for your starting location, and there's other bonuses Italy has that other countries don't. This still brings Italy into 6th place, as overall you're going to have more naval dockyards and easily defended dockyards, as well as you're more suited to naval combat than Germany up here, who's going to be forced to have land battles with France and Poland and Russia. You can focus on defending your borders and focusing entirely on navy if you so wish to do so. And that choice and that focus on navy, and especially when Italy is generally a naval focus anyway in meta multiplayer games, brings you up to 6th position on this list. Next up on this list is a very controversial choice. I wasn't sure where to put this, and when I made the video originally, I really thought this was going to be 1st place. But it's not. Great Britain, 5th place. They start with 45 million people, but they can get a metric fuck ton, should they choose to do so. You start off with 117 oil, 183 aluminium, 86 rubber, 59 tungsten, 466 steel, and 173 chromium. You start off with 62 factories, of which 19 are naval, which gives you undisputed mastery over the seas. In terms of strategic positioning, you're a 10 out of 10, the best it can get. You could only be invaded by the water, and as long as you rule the waves, you're not going to be invaded by the water. Not to mention strong air defences in the south and the southeast will also stop them gaining air superiority, and thus stop them effectively torpedoing all of your ships everywhere that you're trying to keep in the British Channel. The biggest downside of Britain is their focus tree is really lackluster and not particularly impressive, and that's why they're not higher up on this list, unfortunately. They also have huge overseas colonies all around the world. You've got some in South America, in Africa, in Asia, and that means your ships can go anywhere in the world to refuel and no one can stop you, and you have control of the Suez Canal and Gibraltar, giving you unfettered access to the Mediterranean, which the Italians are going to struggle to take from you. Britain can obviously expand a lot. You have the option of the Imperial Conference. It's not easy to do. I actually didn't manage to do it when I was trying to record this, so I'm not even going to load up my second save. But with the Imperial Conference, you basically take over all of your Commonwealth countries, including South Africa, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, which are all very easy. And if you do it well, you're also going to get the British Raj. The British Raj is the most valuable of these. The buffs you get to it, so you might have unrivaled naval production at the beginning of the game, but the buffs you get in the late game really aren't particularly impressive. So your end-up industry without the British Raj, your end-up industry will be something along the lines of 216 factories, of which about 97 will be naval, which is really only on par with France and Germany and some other countries later on the list. It's not actually punching above its weight. And you don't have a particularly large number of buffs. You can immediately build a Vanguard battleship, which is very good. But you don't have many actual buffs to your whole navy. One unique benefit to the Royal Navy is it's 10% cheaper and quicker to re-outfit all of your ships. So if you want to edit a ship, it's cheaper and quicker. You also have a 10% reduction to cruisers and a 10% reduction to light hulls. You have the Battle Fleet Designer, Raiding Fleet Designer, Escort Fleet Designer, and Pacific, Atlantic, and Coastal Fleet Designers. These have all been mentioned before, but they have basically all of the designers you're going to want that I've mentioned for France and Germany. They have better naval speed, and they also have a decisive Battle Chief of the Navy, giving 5% capital attack and armor again, but this is lackluster, and it is not really as good as the French or German one. I don't know why the British would have a worse one than the French and the Germans, considering they're supposed to rule the waves. The same thing goes for naval aviation. They get a 6, 7, and 8% boost to air attack, targeting, and agility, while countries like Germany and other countries, I don't know if France was one of them, I can't remember, but they have higher than 6, 7, and 8%. They had 10, 12, and 13 or something. Lastly, in Britain, even the high military command is not particularly impressive. The best thing you get in terms of uniqueness is you get 15% better attack submarines. But really, there's just not a lot to boost your navy, so it's all very standard, which is a problem I have for other countries higher on the list. The only difference is Britain doesn't have the industry of those countries that are higher up on the list to make up for not having those special bonuses. And that's why I've put it in 5th place overall, which is obviously sad for any British person, myself included, but there we go. In 4th place on this list, we have got Portugal, with a population 9 million. That is it. 9 million, little old Portugal. But what you forget is Portugal has overseas colonies. It has some beautiful islands to shove some torpedo bombers on and control the Atlantic. It also has some beautiful islands down here. Wonderful islands. Beautiful air bases. You also have colonies in Africa. Multiple colonies in Africa. Sizable colonies in Africa. And in India. And in China. All of which allow you to refuel your ships. Allowing your ships to reach anywhere in the world. If you want to attack Japan, you can attack Japan. If you want to attack America, you can attack America. And that is the joys of Portugal, a benefit that only Britain enjoys as much as Portugal with their overseas colonies. You start off with 16 factories, not bad by any measure, 3 of which are naval, not bad again. The true joy of Portugal, however, is their expansion, and that is what I'm going to come on to. I have to admit, some people might say Portugal's not this good, but I disagree. And Portugal is actually my main country for private games with friends, and it is a phenomenal power indeed. Please note that Portugal is a tier 2 country on my list. This means it has the potential to rival America, or any other massive country, if you play it well. And this is why. First of all, you can conquer Brazil, which is absolutely easily done. Again, like walking through a revolving fucking door. You land. Vina Vida Vici. I came, I saw, and I conquered. Within only 2 months. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. You can then conquer Spain. Quite comfortably. Now, I have to admit, this is a difficult one to do. It's not particularly easy. However, if you have a friend playing any other country, I've had friends playing Argentina. I've had friends playing Britain. I've had friends playing Yugoslavia. They can easily, because, you know, basically if you're even a semi-competent Portugal player, you can have a 50-50 stalemate with Spain. But you just need that little push to get over the line. Just 10 extra divisions. And that's what the friend will get you. And if you have a friend to help you out, Portugal is one hell of a power indeed. After your conquest has been completed, Portugal's navy might not be as large as the countries at the beginning, with only 2 battleships and a few cruisers and destroyers, but that's not what's really shown about them for being so good on this list. It's because they have some incredible bonuses and incredible industry. I forgot to go over Britain's navy, and I will say outright, Britain's navy is the most powerful in the game at the start of the game by far. But unfortunately, I just think the bonuses Britain got didn't really pull them up as much as they would have, even with such a large navy. As you can see up here, 227 factories, including 109 naval dockyards. And that is colossal. That is really, really, really crazy. That is higher than Britain, higher than France, higher than Germany, just from conquering Spain and Brazil. And that alone, really, the industry alone, is a huge thing. Moving on to the resources. 17 oil, not enough for you to import some. Aluminium, you can have a colossal air force, one of the strongest in the game. But importantly, 413 steel and 170 chromium. You will have chromium shortages, but the steel should just about do you. It's not as much as France or other bigger countries, but it's certainly enough to keep your navy going. The strength of the Portuguese buffs is really what sets Portugal apart from other countries. First of all, Portugal gets a national spirit called Endless Sea, which gives them 10% extra naval speed and a permanent plus 0.10 daily naval XP, as well as 15% more range to all of your ships. It also gives you plus 15% dockyard output permanently, and also plus 10% escort efficiency. But that 15% means for my 115 my 100 factories, I'm actually getting 115. So not only have I got more factories than France, but every one of my factories is just doing a little bit more work. In terms of our naval chiefs, we have got the Atlantic Fleet Designer. In terms of our design, we have the Atlantic Fleet Designer. This gives us plus 50% armor and plus 10% HP, and also plus 10% armor and heavy attack for all capital ships. So it's one of the best designers in my opinion. They don't have anything else, but realistically, if you've got this, you don't want anything else to begin with. And in terms of the Chief of the Navy, they also have Decisive Battle, as with many others. So they might not get the hench 25% boost that Germany gets, but they get plus 20%, 10% from this, and the other 10% from the designer itself. So you've still got plus 20% to your attack and armor on all of your battleships, which makes Portugal an ideal battleship-focused naval country. You don't really get anything in your high command, unfortunately, which is a little bit sad, but still the 20% boost is more than enough for me to be happy, putting Portugal in 4th place on the list. The next 3 countries on the list are a little bit controversial, and you may not be able to guess which country is which. I'm not happy that I put my number 1 in number 1, but I feel like it's got to be there because it's so unbelievably easy to play. But before I get on to my top 3, I'd like to have a couple of quick honourable mentions for the savvy player who might like to try something different. I made 4 honourable mentions for this video. The first was Romania. I'm not going to go into as much detail with Romania, with these honourable mentions. So Romania has a decent amount of territory and lots of juicy oil, so they're never going to need an oil for their navy. However, they have a massive resource shortage, and they have a small coastline. And not only that, but they can't get out of the Black Sea without doing something with Turkey. And on top of that, they don't really have many factories and much industry, so this didn't quite make the list. Mexico has a similar issue, being one of my other honourable mentions. Quite a lot of territory, quite a lot of industrial potential, but they have a severe lack of resources, unfortunately. We also have Honduras. Honduras is a tiny, tiny little island, but I love this. Honduras actually has potential to make a seriously acceptable submarine navy. You can conquer Central America, make a single country, and you're going to get a sweet little submarine navy playing as Honduras. It actually has some really good focuses specifically for boosting submarines. And lastly, we have Finland, who made my honourable mention list. But the good thing about Finland is they have a minus 5% cost building all ships. But they just get trumped by Norway and Sweden, unfortunately, and they just don't have anything going for them over Norway and Sweden. So it just didn't make the list. Moving on into 3rd place, we have the Soviet Union. Not a country you would think of as a naval power generally, but a naval power it is. The Soviet Union has a colossal population of over 160 million. They also start with 281 oil. I'm not sure if it gets buffed by the mod. Oh, they do. They do. 281 oil, 193 aluminium, 6 rubber, 72 tungsten, 729 up from about 500 steel, which is amazing for your ship production, and 393 chromium. Again, heavy ship production. They start off with a whopping 85 factories, including 6 naval dockyards, which is not bad, considering the highest otherwise is about 10, apart from Britain at 19, which is obviously a lot higher. The thing with Russia that's differentiating it from another thing on the list is you have to prepare for Germany. You don't have time to build a navy until the mid-1940s, because all of your resources are going to be pumped directly into defending the Stalin line here. If you don't, Germany's going to walk over you. You just do not have time to build your navy until you have repelled the initial German invasion. But the thing with Russia is they just have an absolutely fucking monumental industry. So here we go with Russia. As you can see, there has been, like, nothing conquered whatsoever apart from a little bit of Turkey here, which I did just to have access to the Black Sea here, which is easy to do as Russia. I obviously didn't do it myself, I used console commands just to make the video, But you can conquer Turkey quite easily using Russian forces and naval invasions here, because you still have a big enough navy to get naval domination here, so you can just land on the coast, take Istanbul. But what you're going to notice here is 494 factories. That includes 77 naval factories, and that doesn't include any research, which buffs the amount of factories in a state. You also have the absolute pinnacle of naval bases in the Black Sea here. Not just is it the Black Sea, but it's like the mini bit of sea which is inside the Black Sea, which I don't know what it's called. And only you have access to that, which is really, really crazy. And it's lots of space. You could have all the fleets you could possibly imagine here, and that's absolutely brilliant. Russia doesn't start with a large navy, just have a battleship and a couple of other things there, but you do have some other things. The sad side of Russia is their focus tree is horribly outdated and they have no buffs whatsoever to navy. But the industry alone is more than enough to make up for having no focuses, because you can just outproduce anyone else in existence. But there's one very, very, very important thing to note about Russia. First of all, you have... You have naval ship designers, raiding fleet, which I don't really care about, battle fleet designer, which is one of my favourites, the plus 15% research speed, plus 15% capital ship armour and heavy attack, and screens for better torpedoes. That's the one you really want to focus on here. Coastal and escort fleets, not really as good, but the battle fleet designer, 15% boost, amazing. Next up, you have the Chief of the Navy, decisive battle. You can also choose to have the naval air attacks, giving plus 3, 3 and 4% boosts to air attack, targeting and agility. But you want decisive battle. That gives you 10% attack and armor for your capital ships. And finally, you also have the Military High Command Capital Ship Expert, giving you a further 10% attack and armor. That gives Russia an absolutely ridiculous plus 35% armor and heavy attack to all battleships, which is unrivaled by any other country in the game. 20% is considered a good boost, but 35% is considered absolutely bloody incredible. Imagine building a maxed out 1944 super heavy battleship with those 3 buffs. You're not going to have any battleship come even close to your Russian juggernauts. And that alone puts Russia up here in 3rd place. And really, honestly, I was seriously considering putting Russia in 1st place just for that. Unlimited resources, unlimited manpower, unlimited industry, and that battleship buff. And in my heart, I could even say Russia can still be top for me, honestly. Russia is an absolutely undeniable, incredible superpower for naval combat. Despite what anyone else might tell you about Russia not having a good navy. Ignore them. Listen to Kairu. Play Russian Navy. Build battleships. Leave a comment on your conquests. Number 2 is another controversial one, but it is on number 2 because you'll see why. Japan. Now, Japan has many problems, and it is a tier 2 for this reason. It can make an okay navy, and it starts with a good navy. But it's very situational and takes a massive amount of skill to play. Using the mod, you can see resources are hardly boosted, barely 10% extra steel, and considering they already had a resource issue at the beginning of the game, oof. But you start with a huge navy with 4 aircraft carriers, 9 battleships, 15 heavy cruisers, 17 light cruisers, 55 destroyers, and 52 submarines. But you have a woeful lack of resources. Hardly any oil, hardly any steel, hardly any chromium. You have almost nothing worth having, apart from a bit of territory. But what Japan does have is the ability to conquest and some incredible focuses. So, I'm going to load up into a game of Japan where you can see what you could conquer. As Japan, it is phenomenally, I cannot state how difficult it is to be a successful Japan in multiplayer, especially with certain things with China which are a little bit overpowered, such as asymmetric warfare, which are a little bit ridiculous, and it kind of means as China you're going to hold off Japan, and there's very little Japan can do. But as an extraordinarily skilled Japan player, should you manage to conquer China, you're going to be in a phenomenally good position. You're going to be in a better position than America, I would argue. If you can conquer China, and if you can do it before 1939 to 1940, and then you can knock out Pearl Harbor. Beautiful Pearl Harbor, by the way, right here. If you can take that American colony, America will not have a way of getting their ships to your coasts. That means you are, effectively, unassailable by America. That's worth noting, because, realistically, taking anything in Asia is like taking candy from a fucking baby. Japan has no threats whatsoever, with the exception of the Soviet Union. So if you can knock out America's way of attacking you, you're going to become an absolutely insane global, military, and naval superpower. In terms of resources in Japan, once you've done a bit of conquering, you've got a bit of oil, a bit of aluminium, more importantly, 450 steel and 127 chromium. This can be further increased by taking out other provinces around China. There are other areas that have chromium and other bits in, which I'm not going to look through, but there are plenty of other areas that have these resources that you can take here, and it's like taking candy from a baby, honestly. There's nothing they can do to stop you. But where Japan really shines is its focus tree. Quickly noteworthy again, Japan clocks in around 100 naval factories and 250 overall factories. So it's, it's about as good as any other major European power, but slightly better. Slightly better, I would say. But in terms of the focuses, this is where things really shine for Japan. For a start, Japan gets a unique torpedo cruiser design, which no other country in the world gets. They also get an instant focus to get 2 instantly near-completed Yamato-class super battleships. Shit. They also get a national spirit called the First Air Fleet, giving plus 20% to all aircraft carrier sortie efficiency. This means if you have an aircraft carrier with 100 planes, you're going to be launching 120 planes for every 100 that your enemy is launching. And in terms of fighters, that will give you air superiority. On top of that, you have the Yokosuka Naval Arsenal, giving you plus 25% extra aircraft carrier deck size. So you can potentially... Oh, it's absolutely ridiculous. It also gives you minus 15% armor, but it gives you plus 25% range. Very good for reaching those pesky American coastlines. Now, on top of that, you can also get High Command thing, which gives you plus 15% sortie efficiency for your carriers. So you've not only got 25% more planes than your enemy, but you've also got 35% more sorties, which is almost, overall, you're going to be launching 150% of the number of planes that your enemy is. One of your carriers will always be worth at least 1.5 of your enemy carriers. And on top of that, they have another beautiful High Command General, plus 15% AA defense for all naval ships. The only other country in the game that gets this is Germany. Germany and Japan have the best naval defense in the entire game. And on top of that, you can also get plus 5% capital ship armor and attack, with a battle fleet designer giving plus 15% armor and heavy attack. That gives you the nice plus 20%. The main thing with Japan is you need to choose between your battleships or your carriers. If you choose your carriers, plus 25% deck size and plus 35% sortie efficiency. And if you choose your battleships, you're going to be getting plus 20% armor and heavy attack. Both of those options are absolutely incredible. And if you've managed to conquer Japan and get the industry and get the resources, Jesus Christ, Japan can by far become the most powerful naval country in the world. Undisputably. Undisputably. While I'm here, it's worth quickly noting, Japan, I forgot to mention earlier, also gets the Zero Fighter, which is arguably the best carrier fighter in the game. Didn't even mention that. So on top of having twice as much the effective fighters as an enemy aircraft carrier, yours are also just better. So yeah, Japan. Number 1, you probably all saw this coming, the big fat United States. Now the thing is, a well-played Russia and a well-played Japan, and even a well-played Portugal has the potential to be better than America. Easily. Absolutely easily. But the thing with America is it's the only country on the list I put as tier 1. Because you can sit on your toilet and take a giant shit and you've still got a giant navy. America doesn't need to do literally anything. It is already just the most ridiculous country you can imagine. The starting American Navy has 4 aircraft carriers, 15 battleships, 14 heavy cruisers, 11 light cruisers, 98 destroyers, and 48 submarines. And your starting economy has 171 factories, including 23 naval dockyards. That is absolutely insane, by any measure of the word. Absolutely insane. The thing with America is it's not that it's got better potential than Japan, Portugal, Britain and Russia. It doesn't. The potential for America isn't. It is just not as good. It really isn't. You have to go through a civil war in order to go fascist or authoritarian and start conquering. But even with the massive land you just have everything you need, and you don't need to conquer. It's just an easy game for you. You start with a population of 120 million. In terms of your resources, you have 95 oil, infinite oil for all essential purposes, 230 aluminium, 663 steel. The only thing you don't have is chromium, but you can import that because you have such a ridiculous amount of factories. In terms of industry, you've already seen we've got everything you could possibly need. So I've loaded up a slightly more advanced America game. This is obviously without any of the sciences that increase state things, and you can see the number of factories has only increased from 170 to 258, including 67 naval dockyards on the coasts. The thing is, you don't need to conquer land, because even one of those research points, just one research point, is enough to allow you to build an extra probably 2 or 3 factories in every single state. And that's why your industry is going to be far higher than 250 in the end. Because every one of those research points, you're getting 20% more factories. Realistically, you're never going to build all the factories that you need. And I think, I know the Soviets can get up to like 1,000 factories. I think, America can easily get about 800 as well. In terms of naval bases, fucking beautiful. I would have my naval bases on the east coast here, around all these little crevices. Beautifully defended. Air defenses rampant everywhere. Or even better, the best of all, the Great Lakes of Canada. Absolutely gorgeous. Just shove all of your naval dockyards in the Great Lakes, and if you didn't know, it's just so beautiful. You can bring your ships through here, through the river here, you can bring them into this bit, and then they come around here, and then it links up, and it freely goes out into the rest of the world. And it's just the ultimate, by definition, the absolute ultimate naval base location. Like, there is nothing better in terms of naval base locations for security and safety for your ships. You'll never lose a ship in that naval base. In terms of resources, America can now get over 1,000 oil, 800 steel, and their aluminium's still a bit low, but it's still fine, because realistically Britain's going to do most of the air work anyway, I would imagine. But the thing that's said with America, moving on to the assets, the buffs you can get for your navy, America can get a permanent, on top of all of that, a permanent 10% dockyard output from economic tariffs and economic warfare, which can give you a plus 20% dockyard output, which is ridiculous when you consider how many factories you already have. You can get cheaper convoys, and you can also get buffs for your submarines. In terms of ship designers, you've got everything. You've got the Norfolk Yard designer, unique to America, decreasing the cost, but also making the ship vastly worse. It sucks, honestly. You have raiding fleet designers, Atlantic Fleet and Pacific Fleet, the 2 best ones in the game generally. And also the Bethlehem shipbuilding facility, which this gives you plus research speed and also experience, and it makes destroyers cheaper. Realistically, you're going to be going for Atlantic, though, which is the plus 10% armor and heavy attack for your battleships, and carries more health and armor. And Pacific Fleet, obviously, bigger deck size and less armor. So yes, you have some brilliant naval designers there. Chiefs of the Navy in America, they're not amazing, but they're not bad. Your Chief of the Navy probably is going to be the Naval Aviation Expert, giving plus 6, 7, and 8% naval air attack, targeting, and agility from all carriers. And lastly, I didn't know this, I forgot. America has plus 15% naval anti-air attack, like Japan and Germany, the only 3 countries in the game, for plus 15% naval air attack. Brilliant. They also have military high command carriers, plus 15% sortie efficiency. Nowhere near as good as Japan, but you have a bigger industry. And unlike Japan, you have your industry from day one. That is the reason America is the most powerful naval country in Hearts of Iron. From day one, you are pumping out ships on top of your already colossal navy. From day one. While in Japan and Portugal and Russia, you're not even starting to build your navy for 5 years after the game has started. And that's why America's going to be top dog. Because you're just so far ahead that even with the bigger buffs from other countries, they just can't really hope to catch you up with the sheer production you've got going from day one. So thank you for watching this video, everybody. I'm really happy if you stayed until the end. This is my first time trying to make a serious Hearts of Iron video, and I've worked quite hard on it. I spent almost a day writing the notes for my script and thinking where I wanted to place each country on the list. I'm really grateful to you all for coming. If you'd like to see more like this, please leave a comment. I don't even want to say subscribe. Subscribe if you want, great. But leave a comment, because that is what motivates me to make videos. And if you tell me you want me to make another video on a particular topic, I'll do it. If you would like to see me making detailed sort of overviews of countries, I won't say tutorials because I don't want to tell you how to play the game, but I'd like to tell you how countries can be played and the different options available to you, I'm more than happy to make these sorts of videos as well. Please leave a comment below. Please join my Discord. I've put a link in the comments. We host regular Hearts of Iron games, usually weekly or so. We've got a friendly little community in there. It's all very casual. I'm not a big YouTuber. I don't think I ever will be. If something happens there, then you can go back to this. At the moment, I have only 1,000 subscribers. So, yes, should I end up exploding, which I very much doubt I won't. Yeet. I hope to see you in the Discord. I hope to play with you one day in one of my games. We usually have 20-30 people. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.